without further ado, I'd love to kickstart it over to you, Katie, for today's webinar.
All right, thanks, Kathleen. Hi, everyone, and welcome today. My name is Katie Phillip. I'm a part of the education team here at MindBody, and we're here to talk to you today about how to reopen your fitness studio strong after COVID-19. Really, the goal for today's webinar is to give you some perspective. We realize we have people coming to us from all over the globe. All governments around the world are kind of in different phases of allowing different parts of their economies to open up within a wide variety and array of different structures and kind of mandates. So the goal here is to create a conversation around what the reopening will look like. We are here to give you some sort of tools, tips, strategies, and just some perspective from our business consultants that are here with us today. So with that in mind, I'll go ahead and introduce you to your panelists today. All of these individuals that are with us today are part of our MindBody Certified Consultant Marketplace. So we do have those resources available for you. We have a wide variety of individuals that have a varied amount of expertise, working with a different amount of industries that we serve at MindBody, with all different sort of specialties and niches. So I'll go ahead and introduce Josh Biro. He's coming to us from Nomad Business Coaching. So he has been a consultant with us for the past 3 years. He runs a consultancy as well as hosts a business called the Yogapreneur Collective, in which he assists a group of over 120 yoga studios around the world that are a part of his community. So welcome, Josh. Josh is coming to us from Alberta, Canada. We also have with us another Canadian. Crystal Zakaluzny is here, also as a MindBody Certified Consultant. She runs Crystal Zak Consulting. She's coming to us from Saskatchewan. She has a background also as a fitness studio owner. She owned her own space for 6 years and now does exclusive consulting for businesses. So welcome, Crystal. And then Chris Beer is coming to us from Chicago. Chris runs Be Well Consulting. She has a background in finance. She's been a consultant for the past 6 years, with us for the past 2. So we're happy to have you all here with us. So just one additional note here. I know that Kathleen mentioned that you can participate within the chat window. You can also participate within the Q&A section of the webinar. I feel like we don't have to tell anyone anymore how to really engage with Zoom. It would seem a little trite at this point. I think we've all been doing it enough. But we do encourage you, this is really a time and a place for those of us within the global community to really learn from each other. So given the fact that we have places in the United States that are already opening up, Tennessee, Georgia, Alaska, those are already sort of allowing their states to start up their economies. And then we also have places around the world that might not be open for the next several months. So again, we can learn from one another, and we like to do that here in MindBody. We have a great community. We have a large amount of people that are on this webinar, over 500 participants. So the goal here is to share the collective wisdom that we all have. So we encourage that. So we'll go ahead and we'll just get started here. Really, again, we want to cover 3 main topics. We want to cover reopening as it pertains really to your staff. We want to cover reopening as it pertains to your team members, and the communication amidst both of those sort of entities of your business. And then we also want to cover what it'll look like in terms of, just sort of the schedule of the future in your fitness studio, and what it means in terms of what your brand and what your marketing will look like around that. So I'd like to first start, Crystal, with you. We've spoken a lot about what individuals can do. I feel like we've offered a lot of advisement. I know you've been advising a lot of your customers that you've worked with from the start of all this about what to do with their teams. Obviously, people had to sort of furlough employees. They might have had to lay off employees. So now as you start thinking about the reopening, can you speak a little bit more about, what types of communication should you start to arrange with these team members? What has that looked like? What's really the scope been in terms of businesses either being closed or leveraging their instructors just via live streaming opportunities? If you could speak a little bit to that.
Thanks, Katie. Hi, everyone. So basically, a lot of the businesses I'm working with have just been reaching out to their team with a tentative schedule and just finding out, are their team members actually comfortable to come back in? So when they are at that point of opening up the studio, is that even an option? And we're finding out there are some staff members who are not interested at this point of coming in. They don't feel safe and we can't force them. So within that communication, I think it's key to find out how can we still employ them in some way. So there's a lot of things they can do via MindBody live streaming that can still be done from home and still be a key player on your team without actually being in your facility. And then reaching out to those who are comfortable and creating a hybrid schedule that complements both of those at the same time. Who's comfortable and who's not.
So I'd love to hear from you, Josh, just in terms of managing staff and team members. I know you work with a lot of yoga studios, primarily those that have their background in the Bikram world or hot studios. What have you seen in terms of how people have really been leveraging their staff and what it will look like in that world whenever they do start to plan the reopening?
It kind of, yeah, I mean, thanks for having me on, by the way, as well. I mean, I think that what you do with your staff next in terms of what your future studio looks like depends a little bit on where they are right now. So one is their comfort level, to Crystal's point, but it's also like, have you been open this whole time offering virtual classes and your staff have been participating on the regular? Because we have a bunch of studios around the world where it's kind of a 50-50 split, I would say. So we have some people that they've ghosted. They haven't been participating at all in any way, shape, or form. And what I would suggest is that coming out of this, even if they want to come back, you might just consciously decide that you're going to double down on the people who have stayed with you, and those people are going to be your fill-ins now. So you might recalibrate that way a little bit. The other detail here with staff, I think, is, and this is not a new concept, it's just we're at a time where it's exceedingly important. Most staff, just like owners who get into a wellness business, probably don't join. Like, people don't become a fitness instructor, a HIIT instructor, a Pilates instructor, a yoga instructor, because they think this is a great business opportunity. I'm here to make a lot of bank. Like, that was probably not their primary motivation. Now's the time to double down on that. So I would be spending time setting up a couple of really strategic staff meetings and individual meetings as you're coming out of this, so that you can actually have a conversation with them and get them pumped up on the fact that we get to open again and you get to, proliferate the message of this extremely powerful product that we offer. Because that's where they need to be convinced on the most.
Chris, any additional notes from you, just in your experience, what you've seen with the studios that you're working with?
I think, to echo both Crystal and Josh, this is, you're going to have the instructors, you're going to have the clients that are willing to be a part of this right now, and those who want to sit on the sidelines for a little bit. And it's a wonderful opportunity to just kind of do a check and say, okay, well, given, do we need to change our pricing model? Do we need to change our offerings? Tap into the specific talents of the instructors that you do have, and see what you can do from there.
There's just a comment in the question and answer too. Like, what if you have staff that doesn't want to be part of the recorded video library of things? So I think, to this overarching point, you first have to design in your mind, at least, what is the model of your studio moving forward, and then where do your staff fall in. And some of your staff who don't want to fall in to the roles you need, they're either not going to be part of your team, or you're just going to accept that if this person doesn't want to be part of your video library stuff, cool, then they're not. But that might limit their ability to participate with your studio as well.
Such a great point, because everyone's personality is going to be a little bit different. And, some people may not, their personality may not shine through in a video format. So you do need to program accordingly.
And I think you have to look at contracts too, right? So contracts, do they have media release in there now? So a lot of this is a good time if you're bringing people back on or in a new capacity, whether it's pre-recorded, live streaming, you have to update all of these things right now, and you can come back with a new look, like Josh was alluding to.
Yeah, I would be, in my mind, everything is up for negotiation right now. Everything. It doesn't mean you have to change something, but you could, and people probably aren't going to be too surprised by that. So one of the first places I would look when we're talking staff would be any staff contract or agreement that we have in place, setting expectations, standard operating procedures, that sort of stuff. If you've been meaning for a while to make it better, or now you have something new like virtual classes that aren't inclusive of that, you need to update that stuff. Because yeah, media release and intellectual property is a big one.
I know that a lot of studios that we work with have, they've been interested in releasing a video on demand component and a facet of their business. And now it's that was, hoisted upon them to be able to do that. You've almost, though, you've been giving your staff sort of an interview process, just trial by fire, right? You get to see who's really good at it and who's not. So if nothing else good has come from that, you did get to showcase your team that way. Crystal, I'd love to hear from you also. I know you do a lot of sort of deep diving. We call Crystal the mind body wizard around here. She knows the back roads from the mind body system pretty well. I'd love to hear from you, just sort of strategy and any software platform that you might be using. Obviously, we have people here that are visiting us from other systems, but what are sort of the key things that you might want to start looking at operationally, the way that you manage your team, what you need to do in your system in order to sort of prepare or renovate any parts of that?
I think it's really looking at revenue by class. So first, a lot of people are going to have to run their average revenue analysis and know what they're being paid per visit, and then taking that into their schedule. So if you have a virtual schedule going, find out, are all of your classes profitable? Your profit margin is key right now, and knowing if you might move to in-person and only be able to host 5 people in your class, 10 people, is it profitable? Should you just stick with the virtual and make more money right now until it is a point where you can expand and have more people in your space? So there's all these reports and things to actually look at, and you can even look at what was pre-pandemic, so say Q4 for revenue by class, and what classes on your schedule were profitable, what was bringing in, because you're going to open up with a skeleton schedule like you're a brand new business, and you have to communicate that to your staff, that you're going to slowly grow and add classes, and what they used to do before might not be the opportunity. Another great way to include them is to have some kind of private training. So perhaps you have a Pilates studio, you have a reformer. That might be a way to get some clients in person and still supplement your staff and keep them, viable to be on your team by having more of those kind of private training offerings.
And in terms of just staff communication in general, what is your advisement, Chris, that you've been offering, just what might be kind of tougher communications to have with team members around sort of how they feel around these times? Because obviously we've discussed not everyone's going to feel comfortable coming back into the studio with immediacy, just in terms of how you can communicate with your staff adequately.
I think we've all had a crash course in communications over the past few months, and realizing that you don't, I joke, it's like parenting. You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to show up. So you do have to keep consistent communication with your staff, and you may not have all of the answers, but providing a line of communication that's open, that's two-way, and leveraging the ones that are excited about the next phase to give them, say, task force opportunities to help you build this new arm of the business.
And in terms of just general timelines, obviously we've discussed everyone's opening up on a various amount of guidelines and different timelines that the governments are mandating. What would be the general scope for timelines that you would recommend, Crystal, in terms of starting to communicate what by when to your team?
Well, I think as soon as your government has implemented some kind of phase plan, which most governments are, right, that's the time to start communicating. And even in some of the situations, we've been reaching out to some of the clients already just to get a feel of like who's coming back and what are they coming back for, just so we can gauge that to the staff as well. So I think in that, if we're saying, okay, your gyms and fitness centers can open up in stage 1 or phase 1, then they need to start communicating, knowing that that's a timeline, maybe 4 weeks or 2 weeks down the road, and start those communications. Who's coming back, what that schedule might look like, what's the walkthrough, maybe some mock kind of classes with some of your staff if you can, just so you know what numbers you can have in your studio to see what's the flow of people. How are you going to control all of those things, and what new guidelines? Right now there should be a whole new list, right, of what are the new policies. You might have a 24-hour cancellation policy instead of 6 hours. You need to start changing this. Your schedule window might change. All of these things need to be communicated to your team before you actually open. So that's kind of like the timing, right? As you get closer to being able to open, it's walking through what things look like. Have them in the studio once you can like legally have them in, right? And start to walk through what it looks like, all the steps that are necessary.
And I think also that kind of points to the fact of re-envisioning your space, right? So there's going to be this sort of reconceptualization of what your space is, what purpose it's serving, it will look like in the future. Josh, we were discussing right before we hopped on, just in terms of how you can start to really visualize and conceptualize your capacity, right? So can you speak a little bit more to those sort of shifting capacity changes?
Yeah, and this ties in with what Crystal was saying too, that, you know, you've got to be intelligent about running classes. The only sort of caveat to what Crystal had said about, like, is it profitable to run a class? You might choose to run a class that's not profitable right now because there's a bigger purpose. It's like a members only class or something like that, and it's going to help with your longer term retention and your engagement. So it's not the only way I would look at it, but I would start to look at the business, whereas before, you know, and especially in the fitness world, this has always been a little bit of the conversation, but right now more than ever, it's like dollars per square foot per minute of time that you have something in there. So if you have to have a bigger gap between classes and people can't be utilizing the change rooms the same way, and you have a limited number of people in a class, it's really tight in terms of sufficiency. So then the question becomes, how do you increase participation so that you can have more total people paying you something from a cash flow perspective? So part of that is continuing with your video on demand, continuing with your live streaming. So maybe, you know, the studio sort of first phase of reopening will be 1 or 2 or even 3 classes a day spaced out, but then 2 other classes that are scheduled every day that are live streamed. So there's actually 5 classes a day going on. They're just not physically in the studio. The other thing I would consider is, because otherwise we want to run a class like every 2 hours, and that might not be very energy efficient. The other thing I would say is, amidst all of this, we've had to pivot the business towards, you know, something else, something a little bit more flexible than maybe what we had offered before for the product offerings because of the virtual stuff. I would consider that mentality should still be applied now. So people are going to be looking for different classes, different lengths, different styles, different programs. And from a financial standpoint, maybe now's the time where you have, you know, 3 sort of public classes a day, which are more like you have to pre-register. If you don't show up, you're going to get, you know, docked to class or whatever for it. So like, it's really kind of seriously, you have to come to that. But maybe in between those classes, you have like a pre-scheduled series. It's like a 6-week core series or something that you're running that people have to prepay for the whole thing. And it's every Tuesday at 7. Those sorts of things that maybe in the past they weren't, you know, the best fit. Right now, they might actually be great because they're a little simpler. You get some more money up front. It gives you something else to talk about and sell. And then you have more classes per day taking place with that, you know, best number that you can get in there. What was the equation? Dollars per square foot per minute of time as well. So this comes down to expenses, right? Like if you have 2,000 square feet of space, you're only using 1,000 square feet of it. You're limited to 10 people in that 1,000 square feet, and you run a class for 1 hour. You can calculate by that, like how much money could you potentially make? And then how much money do you need per month? So how many of that time slot has to exist for you to actually be profitable? That's what I would start calculating on a little bit. Just at least it's a starting point for what you've got.
Chris, did you have
Adding on to what Josh said, I think, you know, just continuing to be nimble with, you know, what you can offer. And just because you offered something, you know, 6 months ago and it was a flop, I can tell you that 6 months ago, we wouldn't have all been spending, you know, 6 to 8 hours in front of Zoom. But, you know, you're looking at things differently now. So thinking creatively about how can you offer a hybrid of in-studio, on-demand, and live stream, and being nimble and kind of doing it week by week.
I know we've heard from a lot of our customers that, you know, sort of the live streaming opportunity and the space and time that we're in, it has come with some advantages in that you've gotten to play around with, you know, what your class names are and what people are drawn to, and you can sort of start marketing out different opportunities for classes and seeing and measuring like what really is the taste and, you know, sort of a barometer for what your membership base or even new customers might want. Crystal, can you speak a little bit more to that, just kind of the opportunity that's arisen with this sort of new influx of potential customers that have come from people doing either free live Instagram streaming or things of that nature?
I think it's definitely lent itself to a new marketing opportunity, right? So some of these that have tried your free, you're only should be offering free if you have some kind of setup to reach out to them, right? And so that you can follow up, and do you have a virtual offering or pricing option that can suit them to stay for the long haul? And while we have to do this strategically, it's not going to be the same setup as we had before, because maybe we have more offerings, we have different offerings than we had before, and we have a different customer. So in some of this, we're looking at how do we retain some of these virtual customers we've received over this period of time. They're intrigued by what we have to offer. Can we maintain them? And now you alluded to like the time and different things too, but is that going to change as we go forward? So as people go back to work, some businesses have already changed that they're never going back to the office. It's only going to be at home, or kids are still at home. Do we still keep that into account in our schedule going forward? And will we still have to play around? I think we will still have to play around with the strategic times and best times to have this live stream opportunity. And then how do we still reach out to them with some type of offering to keep them? And it's to be careful of, if you're not planning to do live stream for a very long period of time, once you reopen, don't be offering 20 packs or large, big items they have to purchase that you're not going to be able to maintain down the road. I have several clients that have said there are these classes on the schedule that are never going in studio again. They're only ever going to keep them virtual. And it's way better. And we know we're still going to have a virtual setup down the road then. And we're really going to work on making it the best we can.
So let's shift over to customer communications. So I think, before we got on, I feel like what we've seen at MindBody, we've seen fitness studios adapt to this current climate and the mandated closures in sort of threefold ways. So we have those studios that were they went ahead and just shuttered their doors. They shut off their auto pays. They didn't really accommodate any memberships. They granted membership cancellations. They've been closed in their entirety. Then we have studios that are sort of in the middle that are kind of hybridizing what they're offering. They're mainly focused on content production. They're kind of getting out there in front of the customer base that they have, trying to maintain those relationships with their community. And then we have studios that also just sort of went way over into a fully virtual schedule with immediacy. They shifted their customer base. They took their auto pays and their members, and they did it efficiently, and some of them very effectively. So I feel like there is communication that will be related to those sort of three customer buckets. So let's speak a little bit more on that. Chris, let's pass that to you. In terms of customer communication, just the ways in which we can be communicating with our customers, with our members, what kind of timeline would you set on that, and what types of communication?
I think, continuing to reach people in multiple methods. So, your text, email, social channels that you would normally go about, but with a little more personalized touch, knowing that if you can have a feel for which clients may be gung-ho and can't wait to get back to the studio, and will be your first ones in the door, and target them in a way that you may not target the general audience.
How about to you, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, look, in any small business, 20% of your clientele make you 80% of your revenue. So you need to identify that 20% and then go ham on them, like go all in. And so your starting point is anyone who has an existing membership. I would say that there's like three categories that I would start with. One is anyone who has an existing membership who has had it through this whole time and has stayed with you. I pick up the phone. Like that's a phone call. I know phone calls are less whatever than before, but like I would email them, text them, and I would phone them and just give them a warm fuzzy. I would plan classes, or I'd be open for a week where only they can even take classes. Like they need to feel like the cream of the crop right now. That's one of the smartest plays, because that's going to hold you through. The thing that everyone's not talking about with opening at this point is we assume we're going to open up and we have to deal with these government mandates and a lower schedule and try to be profitable. But we're talking about this assuming people are actually going to show up. There's a huge portion of the population is going to take another year before they get gung-ho to come in again. So anyone you've got who is with you, you want to keep them happy and with you. I would be looking at this from retention. So it'd start there. Then it would be anyone who has had a membership with you over like the last year, and maybe they're just paused during this time or something because virtual wasn't for them, and transitioning them back to, okay, we're open again. So like, let's get you back in here. So I'd be focusing on that group. And then the third is anyone who has purchased anything from you within the last, 18 months of time. Because that's a way better bet than you trying to like run ads to some random cold audience and convince them, like, because they have to learn who you are and what you offer and why they would come, and then you've got to sell them something. That's a huge uphill battle. So I'd be focusing internal with communications, and I'd be doing existing members, paused members, and then anyone who's purchased something from you within X time. That would be my focus to start. In terms of where to communicate, email is a no-brainer, but text message right now, I mean, it's always been powerful. I think text would be a good way. And if they're a special person, get on that phone. And send them a letter, send them a snail mail handwritten letter. I mean, that's the stuff that's going to land right now more than anything. People aren't making their value and purchasing decisions based on the best price, and self-care seems selfish right now. So you need to be communicating to them about why their self-care matters on the bigger scheme of things, how it's good for their community, how it's good for your staff, how it's good for them to be a better husband or wife or brother or sister. Like, there's a larger conversation that has to be part of this as well.
And I think that first bucket of people that you mentioned is going to be a wonderful source of really granular information that you're just trying to make guesses on right now. You know, how often, if we start adding in-studio classes, how often should we have them? Should we have more daytime classes, evening classes? Is 6 a good number, or 10? Poll those people who have been your supporters. And I love your idea of just getting on the phone, because that's kind of a novelty right now.
Yeah, the other thing is that those people are your best marketers. Like, we can't see everyone to put your hand up, but if we said, like, put up your hand if word of mouth is one of your primary drivers, I guarantee everyone puts their hand up. So that's not going to be different now, right? The decision-making process for people who are not part of your audience right now might be more difficult than it has been prior to this. So it's going to be the actual people you have in your studio who are your brand ambassadors, who love you, who are getting benefit from you, that are going to be talking about you and leveraging that. That's going to be your most efficient marketing play, phase 2, 3 of this whole thing. So right now, to set up for that, you need to give them a little extra sugar, a little extra maple syrup.
Man, you're full of them today between your special formula.
And I think the retention, like Josh is saying, is just key. I mean, why start to market to new other than if there's someone who's jumped onto your virtual now and has become a member in your business, so to speak. But you have all these people right there. How can you nurture them? And that's where some businesses now are engaging in some type of virtual challenge and increasing engagement. I'm sending out messages that are, the text messages that are just alluding to, we're checking in and making sure you and your loved ones are okay. It has nothing to do with sales. It has nothing to do with any of that, right? It's all about check-in and community and engagement and just showing that we care right now. And so I think those are key things of how we're going to retain our members. And yes, phone call and snail mail works really well.
Yeah, the other detail with this, the nuance of the messaging is about the bigger picture of things and how the participation between you and your clients is also part of the participation with the community, I think is a big part of it. And right now we're in a moment where there are going to be brands that are solidified into eternity and brands that disappear. And the difference is not because someone does something wrong. The difference would be the brand who is able to communicate with their existing clients in such a powerful way that they, like, out of principle, will not leave you. And this is an opportunity to create that. I think about, I was telling this story to Katie on the last group meeting or whatever. We had 2 flights booked prior to this, both of which ended up being canceled. One airline just gave us the money back without any question whatsoever. The other airline refused to give us anything, and we had to do a chargeback on it. Which one do you think I'm going to ever book with again in the future? I mean, it's really just that simple. So that had nothing to do with the money. It was how we were treated. It was a huge hassle with one and a piece of cake with the other. So, I think that coming out of this too, if people see that you're trying to open yourself back up to be able to be of service to them and the community at large, is going to be really powerful. And it's going to create you as the authority in your market moving forward, which ultimately wins.
And I think, leading, when you do reopen, leading confidently, making decisions that are right for your staff, your clients, people will feel that energy and know that you're not just reopening because everybody else is reopening, or you're not just offering classes because the herd is. They come to your studio because they feel like it's just for them. And the more you can do to make it feel like a personalized experience that fits with the ethos and core values, the better off you'll be. People know authenticity.
Actually, I wanted to back up, Katie, if it's okay with you for half a second. When we're looking at, because this ties into what Chris is saying too, and what Crystal was saying before, is that when you're looking at like what's your studio of the future and you're having virtual classes, one of the things that we have to start to consider is right now your virtual classes have been to supplement the fact that you can't have a physical class. But your studio, your future studio, the reason you have a virtual class is not to supplement because you couldn't have a physical class. It's to add additional value to your existing classes. So then you have to decide like who that market is that you're going after. I think that the opportunity here is that for some businesses, you could build a really robust video on demand system of highly produced and quality stuff, and you could expand your geographical market. You could go nationwide if you wanted to. I think for most businesses, that's probably not going to be the case. It's going to be more value to your existing clients so that you can charge a fair price and that your retention is better. So when we're looking at, as we start to open up and you're trying to retain this 20% of people who are going to make 80% of your revenue, I'd be looking at it like, what do those people want? Like, what's going to make them win and help them get more success? And then some of your virtual stuff should be based on that. So maybe a lot of your virtual stuff isn't even just a live class. It's a tutorial. It's a whatever. It's a cooking class. Like anything that's under the umbrella of sensicalness for your business, I would be putting that stuff in there as well. Because again, it goes back to keeping them happy and engaged with you so that you retain them.
Crystal, any additional comments related to that?
Oh, I totally agree with the whole schedule thing, right? And how it's added value. And that's where one of the things with your memberships is your live stream or video on demand going to be a perk of being a member? Or is it going to be something that's a discounted price for those who are members? And I think that's key of like, how do we transition to that? And right now I believe that a lot of it's going to be a perk and added value for those actual paying members that you have. And then how can we grow our business of who's on the video on demand or who's on live stream and additional, but for right now, it's an added value to your customers for sure. So really a perk for members.
I want to just add on to that point because we have a couple of comments in the chat here too. There's Ryan's asking and Carrie's sort of commenting on, what about, because your virtual classes, how do you, if they're free, or if I as a client of yours could get a class for free, why would I pay you for a virtual class? And what I would say to challenge you guys on this is I wouldn't even look at it that way. The reason somebody buys something has nothing to do with it being the best deal. I mean, that's part of it, but the reason they buy something is because they think it can solve a problem for them. They think, or they have an established relationship or they're part of that community. So to Crystal's point with the retention and with the community engagement, right now, I'm going to buy virtual classes from you because I like you and because I want your virtual class. This isn't a change. We're suddenly talking about it in the industry, but the truth of the matter is, you guys, we should have been doing this for the last 5 years and no one did. This is forcing us into a shift. And before COVID ever was on anybody's radar, I could have taken $8 a month virtual classes or got a free class on YouTube or whatever else. That was all available before this as well. So the fact that you now are part of that competition with those guys now, I think that pricing versus the other virtual stuff out there is not even the way I'd look at it at all. I'd look at it from adding more value to your existing membership base and retention strategy. That would be the first major focal place for it.
Completely agree with that. And I think that, definitely people come to you because you are you. It's not because of production values. And I know that's one thing that held many of us back for so long is that, why would I go up against, these, bigger production houses when it's just me and an iPhone in my studio. But I think, it gives and one thing I'd like to say I've noticed a couple people ask, about being a newer studio or if you're later to the live stream game, if you haven't started yet, or if you have just been dabbling in video demand, it is not too late. I don't think, you have to have any sort of cadence on it. And it's not too late because again, it's not going away.
And I'll just add to that, just on behalf of MindBody, obviously, for those of you here in attendance, MindBody does have a new virtual wellness product. So we are offering ways to host videos through a video on demand portion of that product, as well as releasing a live stream feature within the product as well. So I know we're kind of coming up on time here. I know we've covered some big, broad topic. What I would like for everyone in attendance to be aware of is that we have a vast amount of resources at MindBody that are covering all of the topics that are surfacing right now within the chat, within the Q&A section. So if you are looking for more advisement on how to, best live stream your classes, what are the best practices around that? If you're looking for more information around how to price your options and how to actually pay your instructors related to these sort of new virtual services that you might be diving into, we have a ton of resources. One thing I would like to highlight now, I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to share my screen into a conclusive slide here. Sorry. Give me 1 minute. While I'm pulling up my screen, though, I would like to just get sort of one more final note from each of you related to, what is really the sort of final conclusion around one key focus? Like, what will really be the one key component that you need to critically put your attention to whenever you're sort of focusing on what will be most important as you reopen and resurface back into what will be a sort of different landscape? Crystal.
Oh, you're making me go first. I think it just ties back to the retention. Like, you have to wow your members, show your members love, show you're there to take care of them and everything as well as your staff, right? But I think that's key for your business being viable. And if that means you decide you're not going to open your studio, even though your province or state has said you could, because you want to make sure that it's safe for everyone, that might be your decision. And people are going to respect that as long as you keep your engagement up via your emails and different things like that. I think it's important, and plus still offer that virtual. If you do have the opportunity to expand on this video on demand, it doesn't have to be thrown together today. This is an opportunity for you to build an amazing library, and your studio is empty right now. So grab that opportunity to build a great resource for your business.
How about you, Josh?
What was the question? What's the final thought opportunity?
Just one final conclusive thought. And obviously, I think what we see now, business owners have been really pouring their blood, sweat, and tears into a wide variety of things that are taking their focus. Some are very, very overwhelmed. Now they have to think about how to reopen their studios within government mandates, and just with a lot of other pressure from outside sources. So what's the focus? What's one sort of guiding light that you can focus on if you had to pick one?
Yeah, I would say that the reason somebody has come to your fitness or wellness studio at any point in time is not just because you offer the class you offer. I never came to you just because you do a yoga class, or just because you do a HIIT class, or just because you say weight loss or whatever. It's been because I think that you can help me by offering an experience. I think that you're the authority and the professional on it. And I think that I want to be part of a community of positivity and of something to help lift me up. I'm trying to surround myself with positive, uplifting people around whatever I'm trying to accomplish with your business. That's more true now than it has ever been. So just keep the bigger picture is what I would say. And I would say that right now at this moment in time, the best thing you could do is, despite all of these details and the stresses that you're trying to figure out for your business, from your client's perspective, you need to be like the guiding, shining light of positivity and actually fun and goodness in their world, because that is where they're going to come back to in the end. And that's what's going to be really differentiating for you, I think.
All right. My last thought is make sure you get paid. And what I mean there is that it is not business as usual. You have a lot of fluctuations right now from your expenses to your revenue. So it's really the time to sit down and look at, do your current monetization models and what you're planning on offering in the near term do they support your current payroll and fluctuation in attendance? And if they do not, it's time to make adjustments.
And just a few notes here on behalf of the company. We do thank you guys greatly for joining us. So thanks for all of your wise advisement. It's always nice to hear from you, your perspective. A few things just to note as well. We do have a reboot kit that is specifically related to how to reopen your facilities strong. We've set out timelines. It's a very comprehensive document that you can download on our blog. If you go to the MindBody blog, you can download the fitness-specific reboot kit, a great resource and content piece. We also encourage you to join the MindBody One community. So as you've seen here, as you've sort of engaged and interacted with people within your global fitness community, we can learn from one another. That's what MindBody One is designed to be. It's a peer-to-peer space where you can communicate with other business owners that are going through exactly some of the same things that you are. So I encourage you to join the MindBody One community. It is free to all MindBody customers, just a forum for you to create and cultivate community. We also, again, just being aware that we are offering free add-ons, marketing suite, portions of bow tie. If you want to check with your account development rep, if again you are a MindBody customer, we are trying to support you in a variety of ways while everyone is moving through this time and space. So we encourage you to reach out if you want to leverage any of the tools and products that we have. They are being offered for free right now. We are also offering fee relief, so if you are not aware of that to this point, again, being aware of that, you can find opportunity to apply for that within the software itself, within the help menu. And then we also encourage you to explore partnership with Lendio. I know for our US-based customers, what may have been the first round of the PPP program is now come and gone, so we do have another round that's been released. We have a partnership at MindBody with a company called Lendio that can actually help you to sort of facilitate applying for this next round of loans. I'm going to joke with the Canadians just briefly because they were kind of bragging about support that they have in Canada and how easy that is to facilitate, but we're not going to talk about that. If you do go to the MindBody blog also, though, you can find other variety resources that we have for just government agencies around the world that are also offering a wide variety of support for their governances. The last thing to note, we are going to be hosting, more webinars, more upcoming opportunities to meet up. On May 5th, we are showcasing a webinar specific to live streaming best practices. And then on May 7th, we're excited to recognize that we're going to host our first ever online version of MindBody University. So again, that's going to be a whole day. It's sort of, we're slating it as a boot camp specifically related to virtual services. So we're going to cover how to market them, how to price them operationally, how you can staff them, just sort of the parameters around how to dive into that space and operate efficiently within it. So we hope that you'll join us for that. You can also find information on that on the MindBody blog. And then there's our information for our consultants. It's each of their websites there. Again, you guys are always a wealth of knowledge and insight, so we really appreciate having you here. So thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and conclude here. Again, Kathleen mentioned this will be wrapped up and recorded and delivered to you via email with the resources that we've referenced, contact information for the consultants, and just a reference to everything we've discussed. So thank you everyone around the world for joining us. We're always happy to connect with our broader community. Continue to do the great work that you are so tirelessly doing right now. We know that you're putting your heart and soul into having your businesses really survive and thrive through this. So we wish you all well and just continue to do that work. Thank you.
Thank you.